Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar, Goal Setting and Achievement, presented by Dr. Manuel Rosa. Thank you so much.
All right, and thank you very much. As always, it's a pleasure being here. Today, we're going to talk about goal setting. So if you're watching this on record and you have questions, I encourage you right now to write down my email, mrosa@keiseruniversity.edu, and I'll be more than happy to entertain any questions that you may have about the topic, about setting your specific goals, both personal and professional. So today we're going to talk about the objectives for today, understand the components of goal setting, explore decision-making strategies for middle and high school students, and then learn how to create SMART goals. I'm sure that all of you at some point or another has, if you are teaching, has had to set goals, either helping students with their IEPs or on your performance evaluation. Maybe you've had to set some goals for your teaching career. And of course, every day, especially on New Year's, we are setting goals to better ourselves, to better our lives, to stay fit, not drink soda, et cetera, et cetera. So we are always constantly setting goals, whether it's official or unofficial. And we want to get our students in our classrooms into the habit of setting goals and setting SMART goals to give them something to achieve, to provide them with motivation, and also to serve as a talking point between teachers, students, and parents. So if you walk around, you'll look around and search the literature, you'll see different definitions of goals and goal setting. So I just offered a few so that we all are on the same page for the purposes of this webinar. The goal, the result or achievement toward which effort is directed, aim, end. And then we're also going to talk about goal setting, which is established steps to meet the objectives of an individual or a firm. Goals give you long-term vision and short-term motivation. And I think that's important, that final definition, especially for the students in our classrooms who may not be seeing the bigger picture of either passing that standardized test or the FSA or getting to the next grade. So providing that vision, but also those short-term goals and that short-term motivation to get to that end point. And when we set goals, this workshop, you're going to learn about setting goals for your students, as I said, but also if you want to set goals for yourself, both personally and professionally. So when we set goals for students, I love this image because it is about sitting down, treating students as individuals, and taking the time out to realize what their desires are, what their wishes are, and then helping them put that to paper so that the goal could be very visual, and then helping the students create an action plan to follow that goal. So it's a very nurturing process when we are working with students, especially if it's sensitive information or information that's going to be on an IEP. We want to make sure that it is specific and meets the needs of our students. That's going to get them to that next point, whether that next point is the next grade, transitioning to wherever next school they're going to, or into the field, or into a career, or into college, but being very intentional. So when you provide an official definition of students, especially those in middle school, about what a goal is, it may not connect with them. So when defining goals for students, there are a couple of strategies you can use. You can compare to sports. If you have students that are involved in sports, the goal of winning the championship, winning the trophy, winning the season, getting to the playoffs. You can use an analogy like that to break down how every win, which would be a short-term goal, would lead to either a playoff win or a season win, which would be the much longer goal. So if you have students that are into sports or cheering, that's one way to do it. Just having students sit down and encouraging them to visualize the future and ask them what that looks like, and constantly reminding them every day that, okay, this is what they're working towards, is another aspect that you can do to help students think about what goals are. And then asking students, what do they wish? What are their wishes? What are their desires? What do they dream about? And that's another perspective into getting students to figure out how to define goals. So what are the benefits of goal setting? Because when you're talking with students, you have to explain to them and show them that there is a benefit to what they're doing. Benefits of goal setting: student involvement in school activities and transition planning. So if you're helping students with the goals, they're more likely to be involved in school, and it helps with their transitions. It gives them a sense, especially if you review the goals often, of being capable, in control of the situation. So helping them know that goals are within their reach because they're the ones setting them. When students achieve goals, short-term goals, this increases their motivation to achieve new goals. So once a goal is accomplished, moving on to that next goal, and maybe challenging them to make it a little bit more challenging, or revising a current goal. If their goal was to study math for 30 minutes a day, and they've achieved that goal and performed at a mastery level, then maybe telling them to try 35 minutes, 37 minutes, and having them challenge themselves to achieve those goals. Goals that propel students moving forward. In one of our very first sessions, when we talked about morning meetings, we talked about the importance of envisioning and having students sit down and think about what the future looks like. So setting goals, short-term and long-term, has students, it keeps them focused on that future, whether it's passing that grade or moving on to that school or transitioning. So that's important. It transforms big problems into small obstacles. So if the goal is for the student to score a certain percentage on, let's say, the FSA, and that's a bigger goal for the year, and I know a lot of your students right now are probably focused and stressed on that, and you as teachers as well. So on a side note, I want to thank you for getting our students prepared and up to this point, and hopefully see that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and you've done the best that you can. But going back, transforming bigger problems into smaller obstacles and giving them those short-term goals. And then it also holds student accountable, especially when you think about IEPs and the goal that is to help both the student and the parent to know where the student is at any given point. It helps you to hold the student accountable, and it helps goals help parents as well, and it helps you have that communication between the parents and yourself as teachers or administrators. So if setting goals was so easy, everybody would do it and everyone would be successful. But of course, there are challenges. I've always been someone that has been very goal-oriented. Even from a little kid, I can recall always trying to finish homework assignments early. And my family would constantly then challenge me to do more. I used to work for tips at a pharmacy, so I'd give myself certain goals to try and earn more money than I did either the day before or the week before. And even in my social life, when I hang out with my friends, they'll tell you that I start off the evening with, well, let's set some goals for what we want to accomplish today. So I am probably a goal nerd. So I believe in the importance of goals, and there are challenges. Sometimes it's difficult to plan ahead. Certain people are just wired that they just think short term, especially this new generation. I did a workshop on generational differences. This generation coming up is about the here and the now and the immediate gratification. So it's important to sit down with your students and have them to think about planning ahead. You know, a challenge is with goals, you have to monitor yourself and your behavior. And sometimes for the students, sometimes they're just not capable of doing that for various challenges that they have personally. They can be easily distracted. For those students in your classroom that are easily distracted and can't stay focused, they will have challenges setting goals. And finally, just not receiving proper accommodations. If we're telling our students and they have requested certain accommodations and we're supposed to provide them, schools are supposed to provide them, and they're not receiving them, then that's going to make it extremely difficult for them to accomplish the goals, especially the goals that we set out for them in their IEP. So those are challenges, but challenges that we can overcome and help the students and our institutions to overcome them. I'm going to show this video. For this remainder of this presentation, we're going to talk about SMART goals. So here's a video that highlights SMART goals, and then we're going to get into more specifics after.
Regardless if it is professional or personal, we all struggle sometimes to achieve our goals. Many times our struggle is not because of a lack of effort, but rather how our goals have been structured. Anytime you set a goal, or if you find yourself struggling while working towards a goal, keep in mind the word SMART. SMART is an acronym that can be used to help evaluate and add structure to your goals. SMART stands for specific, measurable, actionable, relevant, and time-bound. SMART begins with asking yourself the degree to which a goal is specific. This is arguably the most important part of establishing or evaluating a goal. The less specific a goal, the more difficult it is to determine how long the goal should take to complete or how to measure success. Consider the difference between a goal to get healthy versus the goal to lose weight versus the goal to lose 10 pounds. The goal to get healthy is much less specific than a goal to lose 10 pounds. The next question to ask, how is the goal measured? What determines success? Some goals may be best measured by a simple yes or no, such as the goal of climbing to the top of a mountain, while other goals are better measured by using metrics such as the goal to lose 10 pounds. The key to measurement is making sure that in whatever way the goal is measured, it accurately reflects success. For instance, if you do not have access to a scale, then measuring weight loss will be difficult and less accurate. An alternative measure may be to track how many inches you have lost around the waist. But to what extent does this accurately reflect the goal? Without access to a reliable way of measuring weight, we may want to consider buying a scale or restructuring our goal. Actionable is not asking yes or no, but how will the goal be achieved? What is our action plan? Do we have the resources and capabilities required to achieve success? If not, what are we lacking? Well-designed goals provide clarity of action. If the actions required to achieve a goal are unclear, or there are a large number of actions that need to be taken, we should consider breaking down the main goal into manageable, actionable sub-goals. In isolation, any single goal is relevant, but in life, we most often are in the process of pursuing multiple goals. A common issue we face is having too many goals at the same time, or pursuing the wrong goals. With this in mind, we need a mechanism to help us monitor our goals to make sure we are pursuing our most relevant goals at any given moment in time. One technique is to place goals in a matrix that looks at effort required versus perceived value of achieving the goal. Not always, but most of the time, we will want to focus our energy on low effort, high value goals. Another technique is to use the Pareto principle, also known as the 80-20 rule. Ask, which are the 20% of goals that will provide me with 80% of my return? The last thing we want to make sure is that goals are time-bound. By including a specific date by which a goal should be accomplished, it helps provide incentive and allows us to monitor progress. Consider the difference between the goal to lose 10 pounds and the goal to lose 10 pounds in 10 weeks. Simply by including an element of time, we can now calculate how much we should be losing each week, and if after 5 weeks we have only lost 1 pound, we can revisit our action plan. Be wary of any goal that is open-ended, such as the common goal to learn a foreign language. Last, it is important to reinforce that goal setting is not an event. It is an ongoing process of action, evaluation, and revision. It is not about lowering goals or standards to ensure success. It is about recognizing goals are dynamic because life is dynamic. We do not live in a static world. Life happens. A goal that is relevant today may be irrelevant tomorrow. When using SMART, stay flexible and motivated by setting aside time to reevaluate your goals on a regular basis.
All right, so thank you very much for taking the time to view that video that just gives an overview of the SMART goals. I can definitely relate. I'm going to Europe in approximately a month, actually a month from today, and I'm trying to lose 1 pound a day, 30 pounds right now, so I can gain the 30 pounds when I'm there. So right now I'm not doing well whatsoever, but who knows? I'm trying to remain positive. So for those of you watching this on recording, if you want to record that URL, definitely something you want to do that. I also see we have Caitlin who has joined us. So welcome, Caitlin. If you have any questions throughout the presentation or you want to talk about your specific goals, feel free to put that in the chat. Oh, thank you. Yes, it is. It's very good, clear, concise, and to the point. And when I do these workshops, I also like to provide materials that you can use directly with students. So feel free to, once again, when you get the PowerPoint, when you download the presentation, to just copy and paste that video. All right, so now we're going to talk more specifically about SMART goals. And you provide, Caitlin, in the context of either for yourself or also for helping your students or your employees, depending on what role you're playing at your school. So SMART goals, the S stands for specific. So think about the basic W questions: who, what, when, where, which, and why. As you saw in the video, losing weight could be a goal, exercise more. But when you say, I want to lose 10 pounds in 10 weeks, that tells you, answers a lot of your questions. So for those of you who are working in IEPs and you want to make specific goals, you want to make sure that you provide specific expectations for whatever target areas you are want to address, whether it be literacy, social skills, but you want to be very specific. Include descriptions of the knowledge and skills that you're going to teach your students and how the students' progress will be measured. And then keep in mind that the expectations are individualized. So you want to, when you create your SMART goals and you're specific, you want to make sure it assesses the strengths and the needs of this particular student. And it's not just a goal that's overarching. So measurable, and this is probably where most students and teachers fail to define or make it more challenging, is making the goal measurable. And that is, what metrics are you going to use to determine if you meet the goal? But providing specifics, it makes the goal more tangible because it provides a way to measure progress. If it's a project that's going to take a few months, then you may want to break it down and set some milestones by considering specific tasks to accomplish. So, when working with IEPs or students with disabilities, what's measurable may be different. Measurable may be something you can count or something you can observe. But this is important because when it's measured, it allows parents and teachers to know how much progress a student is making, especially if it's an ongoing goal, and and you can compare it to the last time the performance was measured. So this makes it obvious to both you, the student, and the school to go in and make observations as well. Achievable. Although I aspire to be a reality show Emmy award-winning actor, that may not be achievable right at this moment. I'm not saying never it is, but right at this moment. But so you want to make sure that when you're talking with your students, that that the goals are achievable. So you want to have them focus on how important the goal is, and then what they and you can do to make it attainable. It may require developing new school skills, changing attitude if it's a goal about behavior or attitude. Um, the goal is meant to inspire motivation, not discouragement. Think about how to accomplish the goal and if you have the tools, skills needed. If you don't currently possess those tools, skills, consider what it would take to attain them. And this is especially important for students that are maybe in high school, that are looking into careers, and maybe they want to be, astronauts, but they're not performing well in math or science. So either that's something they have to work on as far as studying more, or maybe then it's the goal of being an astronaut is not on their path, but because they enjoy math or because they enjoy space, maybe it's not necessarily being the astronaut, but there's something more tangible that would still hone into their skills. So making sure it's achievable is something that's very important. And you want to, when you talk about this with students, you want to make sure you talk about the look. How does it look? How does it feel? How are they going to demonstrate? And you want to use action words like apply, explain, point. So definitely when you start crafting your goal, your first word should be something very actionable. Relevant. Relevant refers focusing on something that makes sense with the broader business goal. For example, the goal is to launch a new product. It should be something that's in alignment with the overall business objectives. And in your circumstance, if you're providing a goal for students with an IEP, you want to do something that's relevant and also realistic. What's realistic for the child to be successful, and focusing on the individual strength and needs. As I stated previously, it's not about creating these overarching messages, but rather being very direct with the student. And sometimes these acronyms change. For the R, you may see realistic, you may see relevant. So there are different variations of the SMART goals. But SMART goals is a very popular and very common concept that is in education and in the business world. And then finally, the T. So when it stands for time bound or time. Anyone can set goals, but if it lacks realistic timing, chances are you're not going to succeed. That's why providing those target dates is extremely important. And the examples we use, those are the strategies we use. You want to ask specific questions about the goal deadline and what can be accomplished within that time period. If you're sitting down with a student and who wants to learn their times tables, maybe you want to be more specific. Well, let's do our multiplications of 1, 2, and 3 for these next 2 weeks, and then we'll move on to multiplications of 4, 5, and 6 the following 2 weeks, 7, 8, and 9 in the month of January, and then we will do an overall by June 17th. So providing those little short terms and those specific times can help students to meet those goals. And it's also important that you check in on those goals. I know you'll probably have frequent meetings if you're talking about IEPs. You'll have frequent meetings with or without parents, but it's important that you revisit and you take notes so you can see where the student is making progress, and sharing that with the student in a motivational sense for them to either to work on it or maybe to even redefine the goal. So it's useful to define what should be achieved halfway through the process. Providing time constraints also creates a sense of urgency. But it all depends on the motivation of your student. If your student is not motivated by pressure, doesn't seem to function well with that, then you want to be a little bit more lenient. You want to set goals that are realistic, that they can achieve, some small wins before you do some more challenging. So this is some goal setting strategies, but just a little bit more. We're talking about IEPs. You want to be very specific when writing those goals. For example, you may want to say, raise his or her hand a certain amount of time for attention, use a classroom voice, complete homework, keep hands to him or herself. So, being that specific are going to help students who those goals may apply to. And specific time frame could be during silent reading time, at recess time, by the end of the second term. So these may be need to be more specific depending on your student population and the student you're working with, or the employees, if you're administrators and you're working with teachers, the employees that you're working with. But here are some strategies. So you want to find the time when you set goals with students. You want to encourage them to find the time and have that independent practice. Ask open-ended questions about dreams and desires. Students may not know what a goal is, but they hopefully can iterate verbally or maybe through pictures, what are their dreams and what are their desires. You want to shape goals to match the abilities and reframe to something they have control over. So getting to the underlying heart of the matter, if the students, it's not in their skill sets, then maybe giving them something that is in their skill set, and that's their current skill set. Encourage students to set goals that relate directly to their desire. It is much easier, and I'm sure we can all attest to that, to work on something that you have a desire and a passion for, and something that you're good at. If a student is excited about the Avengers, and you can turn that into an exercise, an activity, a counting activity, or a drawing activity, using stuff like that to motivate. Personally, I'm excited about Game of Thrones, so I would be motivated just to get any sneak peek of the next episode that's going to be out this Sunday. You want to help students to work around their disabilities. Don't let them see it as an obstacle, but an opportunity to highlight and to overcome it and to still persevere. But students may not know perseverance, so it would be helpful for teachers to also teach and model perseverance. What does that look like? Opening up to students, talking about your goals and your challenges, and not being afraid to admit that you have a goal, and for that day you didn't accomplish, or you didn't make any steps towards it, but that you're going to restart again the following day. And New Year's resolution is also always the easiest. I think a lot of people can relate to that. So even if you talk with students who may not understand the concept, if you talk in that concept, that may be able for them to connect the dots. And you want to inspire children to reach their dreams with their inner hero. It's easy to have this extrinsic motivation. I'll give you candy, the grade, I'll give you more television time, I'll give you more play time. But if they can just figure out, for them to do it for themselves intrinsically, because they should be proud that they set their mind to it and they accomplished it, then that is the ultimate, giving students that intrinsic motivation. And as I stated previously, we did an entire workshop on generational differences, and the research has shown with this new generation, the touchpad generation, that intrinsic motivation is diminishing, and it's really all about how many likes, how many comments, how many Snapchats friends I have. So trying to go back to the intrinsic motivation. You want to encourage student participation. That's why when you're setting goals, you may be, just from a pure time perspective, you may just think setting this goal for the student is just easier, but trying to get them to be as involved as possible, and even the parents if they're involved in the process. You want to set the long-term goals first, which for many of you are very in deep into standardized testing, but setting the goals first, whether it be passing to the next grade, and then use long-term goals to set short-term goals. Okay, so what does that look like? If I'm gonna, If I'm going to pass this class, pass that other class, what is that going to look like? And making that, having those conversations. Make the goals reachable. We talked about that, how important it is, especially for those in middle school. You want to give them goals that are going to be manageable and they can accomplish. They can feel how good that is and what that feels like to accomplish a goal. Um, you want to track the progress regularly. I know when we have the many demands of teachers and the many different directions we're pulled in, sometimes to go back, to follow up, to look at that paper, to take that note on the student's progress may not be on the top priority, but you want to track the progress regularly, especially because if in the long run, it's going to help not only the student, but also the performances, if they're behavior based or classroom management based or education based. If it ultimately also is going to help you and then the learning environment, then it's in everyone's best interest to do that. You want to provide students with feedback, try and make it positive, try and make it envisioning, but where they are with their goal, where they went wrong, or where they could have spent their time better. You want to revisit past goals. Sometimes students need the reminder that, well, remember when you had this goal? Remember when you had that goal and you did well? So you can do it again. You have the motivation, you have the strength, you have the perseverance. So sometimes revisiting past goals can help remind the student of that accomplishment. Keep your baseline assessments. So you know where you're a student, if you're doing these goals for students, you know where they are performing, at what level they're performing. So you may involve them in goal setting and they are very conservative in where they think they should go. And you know that from a baseline perspective, they can perform at that level. So you may want to challenge them or redefine that goal for them, being positive, knowing that you believe they can achieve the goal. And then identify support systems. Hopefully the support systems are their family members in helping them achieve their goals, administrators that may be in your school, whoever you believe that they have made a connection with, peers, but letting them know and hopefully having them identify the support systems to help them accomplish their goals. And very important for all of us, even ourselves as adult human beings, there are going to be setbacks and failures, and our students aren't going to just know, well, some of them will have that inner perseverance. I was talking about that yesterday. Some kids are just born resilient, and no matter how much they are fall, they get right back up and they just continue on. But not all students are like that. So, but it's also, there's not a learned behavior. So you want to make sure you intentionally teach students to handle setbacks and failures. So how would you do this? When they're working towards their goal, you want to praise them and give them that positive encouragement, that positive feedback. If it's more specific about schoolwork, you want to link schoolwork to the goals they want for themselves. For example, if their family member has said if they get an A on the assignment, they're going to get $10. So then pointing that out and saying, well, you really wanted to buy that new Marvel's action figure. So when you get these A's, you're going to be able to buy that action figure. So having them, see the bigger picture, if just performing well in school is not good enough. You want to praise the work process as well as the product. So let's say, for example, you identified that you wanted the student to keep his hands to himself, and throughout the day, he out of the 10 times there was opportunities, and maybe once or twice he went out of line and started putting his hands elsewhere. You may want to just comment on, hey, I knew you could do it. I saw you could do it. You did it from this certain time period. So you're working on it, but I need that final product to be where you are not doing it at all. And then if they do succeed, when they succeed, ask, well, how did you do it? You were misbehaving yesterday, and today you were perfect. So what was the difference between today and yesterday? How did you do it? That would help with goal setting, especially when it comes to classroom management and behavior. If there are times when students can just, all of a sudden they're behaving, and that's a goal you set for them, then finding out, well, what was different about that time or that time period. And here's some sample recognition. Great job. You achieved your best score in a science test all year by participating more in small groups and completing all your homework. So this is very specific. We talked about having goals that are specific, but when you recognize, you want to be very specific. So this talk says, great job. You achieved your best score. So this acknowledges that out of all the science tests, this was the best score for the entire year. And then how did this person do it? They participated in small groups and completed all the homework. So you're giving the students the valuable feedback and all the steps that it took for them to reach the goal and having it click. Well, if I do this, if I do that, if I do the other thing, then I'll be able to achieve my goal as well. So here's a cheat sheet, a little checklist that you can have for yourself when you're writing goals. Or if students are writing goals, or Caitlin, you can use this for your own goals for students. And if you're watching this on demand, you will have the slides, but you can also take a picture with your phone of the checklist. Is the goal specific? Ask yourself, it's not too narrow in focus or too broad. So this is going back to creating our SMART goals. Is the goal measurable or directly observable? Some of these goals you'll just be observing with your student. Is it relevant for the student's environment or situation? That's important. Is the goal attainable but challenging enough? Starting out, if you're first introducing the concept, if there are students in middle school, you may want to make it lean a little bit more attainable just to get into the practice, as I said. Is this something the student really wants to work on and something you can help the student do? And that's going back to the student's desire and their passion and their wishes. Is there a timeline for the goal? And the timeline should be realistic. And then finally, can the student vision the completed goal or tell what the goal will look like when finished? And some students may not be able to verbally articulate that, but maybe there's an image, maybe there's a drawing, a color, but something that they will know and you will know that when they have accomplished it, this is what it will look like. And this goes back to what I mentioned earlier, the whole envisioning that we should practice in our morning meetings, which you should watch that on demand if you have not done so already. All right, so I wanted to make this a very interactive workshop. I know I have Caitlin on the line. So Caitlin, you can take me up on the opportunity to work on this now, or you can do this on your own time. But I really wanted the participants, and so if you're watching this on demand, take 3 minutes to write down a goal you currently have or a new goal you would like to accomplish. And it could be both, it could be personal or professional. And I want you to make sure you're applying the SMART techniques for the goal. So if you are watching this on demand, I want you to take the time now to do this. And then you can email me, mrosa@keiseruniversity.edu. And I can give you some feedback on the goal and then provide some steps or help you develop some steps on how you want to accomplish the goal. And this could be a goal you have for your students on helping your students set goals better. This could be a goal you have on improving your your teaching style or classroom management. It could be a goal for your career, whether you want to move up to a dean of students or a superintendent or a principal, or it could be a personal goal. We will travel out of Florida by the end of 2020. Okay, that's very good. So very specific. She's going to be travel out of Florida. Even though I would challenge you to even narrow that down even further, maybe to the West Coast, to the Northeast. And by the end of 2020, is that December 31st? Is that January? How much is this going to cost, Caitlin? So yeah, we're going to have a lot more follow up with this, Caitlin. But a very good start. And I like where you're going. And I have actually have great suggestions of where you should travel. So consider us friends forever when it comes to goal setting. I'm Rosa at KeiserUniversity.edu. Thank you, Caitlin, for participating. And I will help you achieve that goal. Just not financially. I'm broke. All right. And one final thing, talk about extrinsic motivation. I talked about the importance of internal motivation, but reality is there are some outside factors that could help students be motivated for their goals. And that is, having family and friends that they want to impress or they want to make proud, having a workout partner or a personal trainer. If your goal is health, having that dynamic and having that person be there to motivate you, and just knowing that someone else is going to the gym will make you want to go to the gym as well. I have this Apple Watch, which even though it is a machine, it tells me when to stand, when to work out, how many minutes, and it's actually tricked me into thinking I should be working out more. So the workout partner could be real or it could be artificial intelligence. You never know. The goal, if they get someone getting ready for a competition or a program, that could be extrinsic. And then medical, if someone just needs to get healthier for medical reasons, then that could be the catalyst to do more, perform better, and to start creating goals. For you, Caitlin, your motivation should be you find yourself a travel agent or a flight attendant who has frequent flyer miles or buddy passes and will help you get outside of Florida better. Or you rent a car and just drive to Georgia. And then intrinsic motivation, the ideal, envision yourself 100% successful in the goal. So how would your life be different? What would you be doing that you are unable to do now? And how would it make you feel? So I imagine, Caitlin, if you were out of Florida, hopefully it is December, so it'll actually be winter. So you will be freezing when you go up north. Unless you go south. So what would be doing that you're unable to do now? Well, I guess you'd be able to relax, have fun, enjoy. And how would it make you feel? It would probably make you feel great. So that's why you to be more specific if you want to go out. All right, so you don't mind this now. All right, so be specific, whether it's winter, summer, what type of weather you're looking at. Do you want a beach resort? Do you want inner city? I feel like I'm talking House Hunters International now. So let me move on. So why do goals fail? And hopefully these will not fail because you attended this great goal setting workshop and you've learned a lot. But if for some reason they do fail, it could be because first of all, you didn't follow the SMART strategy. Maybe you didn't define your goal well. Maybe you didn't choose the right goal, or someone chose it for you and you really weren't excited about it. Maybe it just was not important enough for you to want to participate in. Or maybe you just left it to chance. You didn't do anything. You just set the goal, but you really didn't do anything towards the goals. You just figured, well, it's destiny whether it happened or not. Sharing goals it really all depends on your personality. But sharing goals could be helpful. When I achieved my dissertation, when I graduated, which was, I think it's like 9 years ago, a couple days ago, was my anniversary of graduating. And I never told a single soul. I never told my mother, my family members. I never told anyone I was applying for the PhD or I was going for my PhD because I thought maybe I wasn't going to be able to accomplish it. So if no one knew, then no one would know I didn't accomplish it. But I did accomplish it. So sharing goals is proven to help. And but I did have a colleague who was there every step of the way. So I take it back. So I did share it with her, and she was my partner. So sharing did help, but depending on who you're going to share with, could be motivating or not, because it did motivate me, the fact that I want to surprise my mother when she saw me walk across the stage. So that was motivating for me. Do not set milestones. So you want to make sure they're very intentional and short. Do not factor in the work. That's why people fail. They don't know how much work it's going to be. Even when I started my dissertation, my doctoral studies, I was just doing it because I had free tuition, and I didn't think about well, at the end of this coursework, I'm gonna have to sit down and write this major project paper. So I didn't factor in the work, but I persisted. And they just may be unrealistic. So especially when you're working with your students with disabilities, who will be very dissuaded by not accomplishing their goals, think about and having that conversation, especially with the parents, why do goals fail, and then how can we reverse that? How can we prevent that from happening? So Caitlin, if you don't have any vacation days in December, your goal may fail. So you better make sure you talk to your supervisor, get the time off, and have that vacation ready. So here are some final tips as we wrap up our goal setting session. Write your goals down, and you may want to make it visible on a refrigerator, on a notebook in front of your desk in the classroom. Especially for the students, have them write it in their notebooks and on their desks. Visualize for yourself and for your students. What does it look like? How am I going to feel? Excuse me, when it's over. Do not be afraid to reevaluate your goal, and with the students. Do not let your goals control you. I have to learn this because every time this Apple Watch says stand, I stop whatever I'm doing and I start standing. If it tells me to do an 8-minute walk, I start doing an 8-minute walk. So really, don't let these goals control you. Find the balance. If you find yourself spending too much time, or students are focused on that one goal and they're not absorbing anything else, or they're not focused on the other subjects or topics, you want to help them to find a balance. Use positive language, accept change, be smart, and we talked about that and you saw the video. Life happens. Share with your students that they may be well-intended on their way, and there's going to be some obstacle that they didn't factor in, and encouraging them to just keep on and to persist. Remind these students that they should be their goals and reflect your values, and the same thing for yourself. Reward yourself along the way if you made some minor steps towards the goals. You want to reward yourself. So Caitlin, if you find a good flight or a good rental car, you want to reward yourself. If you saved up some money, you want to reward. If you found a hotel on sale, as you accomplish these little milestones, you want to reward yourself. And then finally, enjoy. Goal setting and achieving is something that should be fun, because you are telling yourself or others, or sharing with your students, or telling your students, to have a wish, to have a dream, to have a desire to improve themselves, and to work at nothing, and to be specific and smart, and accomplish them. And once they accomplish this goal, to move on to the next goal. And if they practice this now, while they're in middle school, while they're in high school, the many achievements that they make, whether no matter how big or small, it's going to motivate them to do well, to be positive, and to get them to that next step, whatever that next step is for that individual student. So just to leave you with this quote, every second is unique and holds the potential to be everything and nothing at the same time. The fact that you are one thing at this second does not mean you have to be consistent in the next second. Every second you get the chance to reinvent yourself. So set those goals, the goals to what you want to be, what you want to do, what you want your students to do, what they want to do. And just keep in mind that every second, if you decide to do something else, you get to reinvent yourself and and change that goal, and the ultimate goal of being successful, or whatever your wish or desire or dream is at the time. All right, any questions? There is my email, mrosa@kaiseruniversity.edu. But if you have any other questions, if not, Caitlin, like I said, you can email me whenever you like, and we can help you define your goal further. Great presentation. Thank you very much. Well, thank you, Caitlin. You made it great, and thank you for participating. And we hope to see